There we go. So, hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. And my job now is to talk about the new reverse charge that's coming in the construction sector. And you might have heard me talk about this before because it's been coming in for the last, just over a year, because it was due to come in September 2019. Then it was postponed until September 2020. And now it's been postponed again because of COVID until March 2021. So 1st of March 2021 is the new introduction date for this. I make no apology for talking about it again because it's a huge change to the sector. It's going to make a massive difference to the bookkeeping and accounting functions of businesses within the sector, and you need to be ready. So let's get started. Why, first of all, is it coming in? Well, HMRC say that there's sustained criminal attacks and VAT fraud in this sector. And what they're saying is happening is that where in normal circumstances there would be a payment or charge of VAT from the subcontractor to a main contractor for construction services, HMRC is saying that the VAT that is due to be paid over to them by the subcontractor just doesn't get paid. And so that's the fraud, that it's charged, that the main contractor pays it to the subcontractor, the main contractor claims it back from HMRC, but the subcontractor disappears with that VAT. That's what they say. We've seen it in a number of other sectors, as it says there, gold, mobile phones, etc. That's what HMRC says is happening, and that's why they've decided to introduce this new reverse charge. So let's have a look at exactly what it is and what it means. So from the 1st of March 2021, the change is at this subcontractor and main contractor level. Okay, so there's no change to the main contractor's charges to their customer. That will still be with VAT if VAT is chargeable on the construction services. And of course, the workforce is employed by the subcontractor, so there's no VAT there. The change is in the middle there of this slide. And what it means is the subcontractor does not charge VAT to the main contractor under certain circumstances, which we'll go on to look at in detail. The main contractor pays the VAT instead to HMRC and recovers it on their VAT return. So the subcontractor does not charge VAT. The main contractor pays the VAT on its VAT return and recovers it on that same VAT return. So what is that doing? Well, HMRC think it will make sure that VAT is paid on the services and the subcontractor doesn't disappear with the VAT. That's the aim of it. Let's have a look at the scope then of this new reverse charge. So it applies to supplies where payment has to be reported under the CIS scheme. So that means, in general, most types of construction work, including demolition, groundworks, all types of construction alteration, repair, installation of heat, light, power systems, painting and decorating. Doesn't apply to architects or surveyor services, so they are outside of the scheme. They'll continue to charge VAT as normal on their services, but anyone who is supplying services that have to be reported under the CIS will have to use the reverse charge. There are exceptions though, as I mentioned before. If you're charging an end user, then you don't have to use the scheme, you add VAT as normal. Let's have a closer look at that. Not applicable to end users, they have to use the normal rules. So if you are supplying that end user, you would charge them VAT as normal if VAT is chargeable on your supply. It's not always going to be obvious if your customer is the end user. So that means that, in our view, the burden is on the customer to say, look, I'm an end user, you shouldn't be charging me VAT. Or, of course, it can go into the contract. If you've got a contract for the services that you're providing, then you can include within the contract whether your customer is the end user. Also doesn't apply between landlord and tenant. So if the landlord is charging the tenant for construction services, then normal VAT rules apply. The same thing by a subcontractor to a landlord who will then supply the tenant. So can you see that you've got to know what is the link between your supply and onward supplies? So it puts that burden on you as the subcontractor to understand whether your customer is the end user and to make sure that you know that so that you don't charge VAT, or if they are the end user, you do charge VAT as normal. It also doesn't apply to suppliers within a VAT group. So if you've got a group registration and you're supplying a member of your group with construction services, then this new scheme doesn't apply. And it doesn't apply because suppliers within a VAT group are not subject to VAT ever. So you would not have to worry about it if you're supplying a member of your group. It also doesn't apply to suppliers within a corporate group. So if you're a member of a corporate group and you are making a supply of construction services to that member, then you would charge them VAT as normal because the special reverse charge doesn't apply. So you probably gathered that it's not simple at all. It's going to take some time to get used to it, and we don't have long between now and the 1st of March. So in terms of the detail, in the construction sector, we have two positive rates of VAT, 20% and 5%, and the reverse charge will apply to both 5% and 20%. But it doesn't apply if you're making supplies that are zero rated. So for example, if you're constructing a home, those services would normally be zero rated. Reverse charge doesn't apply, and it doesn't apply because there's no VAT anyway. Okay, so it only applies if you've got a positive rate of VAT, either the reduced rate or the standard rate, 20%. What happens if you're supplying both services and goods? Well, HMRC say the reverse charge applies to the whole supply. So although it would normally only apply to services and not goods, if you're making a single supply where you've got goods and services involved, and the reverse charge should apply, then you apply it to the whole supply. You don't try and pick out the pieces that are subject to reverse charge and charge VAT on the rest. You treat the whole lot as reverse chargeable. If you have a supply of services that are covered by the scheme together with services that aren't covered by the scheme, then again, the whole supply should be subject to the reverse charge. But we have this 5% rule, which says that if the element that's subject to the reverse charge is less than 5% of the whole supply, then you don't have to use the reverse charge. So all this detail makes it quite complex. And you need to be ready for this coming in. You need to have thought about when you need to apply it and when you don't, so that you're ready and up and running for the 1st of March. And just a reminder, this does not change in any way the entitlement to recover VAT on purchases. So you are entitled, whether you supply services subject to the reverse charge or the normal rules, you still get your input VAT back. It doesn't change that at all. Okay. So let's have a look at how your invoicing is going to have to change in order to cope with this new reverse charge. So if you're the supplier, you're the subcontractor who is invoicing onto a main contractor, and your supplies are subject to the reverse charge, then your invoices have to look different. So all the information you would normally be required to show on a VAT invoice needs to be on your invoice. But in addition to that, two things. One is you show that the domestic reverse charge applies by including one of these rules here. It's not in the law as to exactly what you have to say. So as long as you put some combination of reverse charge, VAT Act and Section 55A, or your customers paying the VAT to HMRC, that's fine. There's no strict rule about what to say, but you must say something. So you must make the point that reverse charge applies. But you must also show the amount of VAT due under the reverse charge. So you as the supplier have to calculate it, and you have to show it on your invoice, but you don't include it in the amount shown as what your supplier must, what your customers must pay to you, because they're responsible for paying over the VAT. So you tell them how much VAT they've got to pay, you tell them it's under the reverse charge, but they only pay you the net amount. So you need to get moving with changing your invoicing system. If you're issuing invoices and with a, on a computerized system, you need to make sure that that system will be able to cope with this. It will be able to show these words or some combination of these words. It will be able to show that the VAT amount is X, but it must not include it in the total amount shown as being payable on the invoice. So you might need some changes to your accounting system in order to be able to cope with that. And you've got, we're now 1st of October, so you've got 5 months, October, November, December, January, February, 5 months to get ready. Let's have a recap. Always good to have a diagram, isn't it, to work through. So here we start question 1, top left. Are any of the supplies you make within the scope of CIS? And don't forget that 5% disregard. If the supplies within it are less than 5%, then you don't carry on. You would go to the right and say normal VAT rules apply. But let's assume yes, I'm making CIS services. Is the supply standard rated or reduced rated, 20% or 5%? No. If it's 0 rated, normal rules apply. But if it is either 20% or 5%, yes. Question 3, is your customer VAT registered? You've got to know that. You've got to know whether they're VAT registered or not. Hopefully you do. I would suggest that you start keeping a record of the VAT registration numbers of your customers so that you're ready for this. So if your customer's not VAT registered, then you would charge VAT as normal because they can't handle the reverse charge because they're not VAT registered. If they are VAT registered, we carry on to question 4. Is your customer CIS registered? So you've got to know that as well. You would probably already know that though, so that's not something new, but you need to be able to access that information. If the answer is no, again, normal VAT rules apply. So if they're not part of the CIS scheme, you go back to your normal VAT rules, charging 5% or 20% as applicable. Has your customer provided written end user confirmation the supplies are accepted supplies? So this is basically saying, has the end user told you that actually the domestic reverse charge should not apply? And if they have, then you must charge them VAT as normal because they're telling you, I'm the end user. If they're not the end user and they haven't told you they're the end user, then you would treat it under the domestic reverse charge rules. Okay, so this little diagram here will help you through determining whether you charge VAT as normal or indeed whether you use the special new rules. So worth keeping that to hand. So when does it start? As I said, 1st of March 2021 is the date that it's due to start. No transitional period, so we're going straight into it. Now, your guess is as good as mine as to whether there's going to be another postponement. This time it was because of COVID. So, if COVID is still raging early next year and HMRC believes that it's going to be tough for businesses to fulfill all of these requirements, to have to deal with changes to their systems and so on, then they might postpone again. But we have to assume that it will apply from the 1st of March and to get ready. So that means that if the tax point for the supplies that you've made is before the 1st of March, then you treat it as normal rules. Now, tax point means receipt of money or issuing an invoice. So if you either receive the cash for some services before the 1st of March, normal VAT rules, so you're due to pay over 5% or 20%. But if that's after, so you raise an invoice or you receive payment after the 1st of March 2021, then you're into the reverse charge situation and you have to not charge VAT to your customer. They will account for it under the reverse charge. There are some different rules for self-billed invoices. This is where your customer raises the issue, raises the invoice on your behalf, and also authenticated receipts. I'm not going to go into those now because we don't have time, but if it's something that applies to you, then get in touch. And HMRC have said that they will treat this with a light touch, inverted commas, for the first 6 months. So what that means is they will still tell you that you need to pay the VAT if you've got it wrong. Let's say you've treated it as a reverse charge supplier and it's not, you should have added VAT. HMRC will come along and they will make you pay the VAT. They just won't penalise you. That's what they're saying. You know, if you've done what you can to determine whether the new rules apply or not, then HMRC have said, well, we won't penalise you, but you will still have to pay over the VAT. And then obviously it's your responsibility to try and get your customer to pay for that. So obviously it's best to get it right from the start, so you're not in any kind of situation where you're out of pocket. So let's have a look. I've got a couple of slides here which list out the practical issues, firstly for the subcontractor and then for the main contractor as well, because both are affected obviously by this. For the subcontractor, they're the ones who are going to have changes to the system for issuing invoices. Your staff will need to be trained so that they understand the new rules and they know when they're going to have to account for VAT as normal, or when it's going to go under the new rules, no VAT on the invoices. You need to be able to identify the status of your customer. Are they CIS registered? Are they VAT registered? Get that done now. You know, if you've got customers who you are always doing work for, you know, find out those things now. As I say, you've got 5 months, get working on that so that you have your list at the ready. If there is a change of status mid-contract, you need to know that. So let's say that your customer said, well, I'm the end customer, you don't have to charge me VAT. Then partway through the contract, you're working for them, that changes, and for some reason they're now going to be charging on the construction services to another end user, then you have to start charging them VAT. So you need to know if there's a change of status of your customer partway through the contract. So if you've got a contract with them, write it into the contract. You must tell me if there's a change to your status, so that they have to tell you. Do you need to amend the standard contract terms then in your contract? I would say yes, you do, because you need to put in about the change of status. You need to say that you understand they're VAT registered and they're CIS registered. So have a look at your standard contract terms, see whether you think you should change them. Now, a couple of points about how this is going to impact you. You'll see the first point up there, switch to monthly VAT returns, and this point, adverse cash flow position. Now, this is the worst of it for subcontractors, because up until now, you will have been charging VAT to your customer, and you don't have to pay that VAT over to HMRC for probably for up to 3 months if you're on quarterly VAT returns. So what that means is you will no longer have that VAT in your cash flow after the 1st of March, because if the reverse charge applies, you don't charge VAT, you don't collect it from your customer, you will not have it for those 3 months until you have to pay it over to HMRC. So that is bad news. Lack of cash flow is going to be a big problem for subcontractors. My suggestion is switch to monthly VAT returns, because then you can still recover the VAT on your purchases, no change to input VAT, as I said earlier. So at least you'll be putting in returns on a monthly basis. You'll be getting a repayment of VAT more quickly. don't use the flat rate scheme. If you're on the flat rate scheme, that's a scheme where you don't charge VAT as normal. You pay VAT on a flat rate on your supplies. That is going to really badly affect you if you're on the flat rate scheme. So you need to come out of that if you're a subcontractor and you're going to be impacted by this new reverse charge. And if in doubt, if the recipient is VAT registered and the payments are subject to CIS, HMRC have said the reverse charge applies. So if you know your recipient is VAT registered and the payments are subject to the scheme, the CIS scheme, then you apply the reverse charge. That's what HMRC have said. So really important things there for the subcontractor. Think about your cash flow position. Think about whether you should switch to monthly VAT returns. Think about whether you need a loan to take you through this. You know, whether you need cash flow in your business, which won't come from the VAT anymore. So do you need funding? And also, if you're on the flat rate scheme, get out of it. Get out of it before the 1st of March. Okay, so that's how it impacts on the subcontractor. On the main contractor, so for the main contractor, they too will have system changes. Sometimes they'll be acting as the end user, sometimes they'll be effectively a subcontractor within a chain, so they will have all the issues that the subcontractor has. But they will also, when they're acting as the main contractor, they will have to apply the reverse charge. They will have to recognise when you've got charges coming in that VAT needs to be paid on those charges under the reverse charge scheme. That means output VAT paid in box 1 of your VAT return, and that VAT is recoverable as input VAT in box 4 of your VAT return. But you need to make sure that your subcontractor has not charged you VAT because you are going to apply the reverse charge. If you're self-billing, as I said before, if you're raising invoices on behalf of your subcontractors, you will be the one who needs to determine whether the reverse charge applies. So you'll be in the position of the subcontractor at that point. You need to get ready. Again, do your staff need to be trained? Do your accounts function? Do you need to have any changes to your accounting software? Do you need to identify the status of your customer? Are they CIS registered? Are they VAT registered? Have they given you an end user confirmation? Have you asked them? I mean, that's the point, is from the 1st of March and all the run up to the 1st of March, any contracts that you think will be running at the 1st of March, you need to ask them, are you the end user? Do I need to charge you VAT, or do I use the reverse charge system? Mixed supplies, as I mentioned, we've got that 5% allowance, so think about that. Do you need to amend your standard contract terms? The same as for subcontractors. And for you, the main contractor, your cash flow position is going to be better because you don't have to pay the VAT to your subcontractor and then wait until you can recover it from HMRC, because you're doing it on the VAT return. So you actually will be in a much better cash flow position. But of course, you've got to remember that your subcontractors are going to be in a worse cash flow position. Is there anything you can do to help them? Might they go under? Should you be encouraging them now to have a look at funding? Do you need to talk to them about this new system that's coming in? Do they know about it so that they get it right from the beginning? All of these sorts of things you've got 5 months to think about. There will be more information coming out. HMRC have actually issued guidance already, which is good. So we know the way that they are going to see things. But you need to be talking in the chain to your suppliers, to your customers, in order to make sure that from the 1st of March you're going to get this right, because you don't want to be left in a position where you've charged VAT wrongly because your contractor won't be able to recover it, or you haven't charged VAT where you should have charged VAT because HMRC will be on your back. Okay, so that was a really quick run through in 25 minutes. And hopefully I've covered the main points. But are there any questions?
Thank you so much indeed, Sue. I think the first question is, have you got a speed dial number?
Yes, it's there on the screen. Yeah, I'll make sure I'm around in the run up to the 1st of March.
Indeed, yeah. Wow, what a minefield.
Yeah.
What a minefield. But thank you so much for the way that you articulated that in such a way that we could understand. So thank you so much for doing that for us with clarity.
Pleasure.
So thank you. But yeah, like Sue said, very much a case of inviting you now for open questions. So please do unmute yourself if you want to ask Sue a question directly. Very much so. Anyone for a question? It's silence.
I'll shock them.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, I think the presentation was so good and yeah, so clear.
Covered everything.
Yeah, very, very good. I didn't know though if you want to put your email in the you know, in the chat bar.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
so if anyone wants to get hold of you.
Okay, yeah, we'll do. We'll do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be an awful year next year. You know, we've got Brexit, final Brexit on the 1st of January, and
Yeah.
at the moment, no deal. We've got this coming in on the 1st of March. We've got businesses going under. I mean, it's really going to be tough. So all I can say is get ready in time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much indeed for that guidance.